never imagined that one day I would be forced to reopen wounds I had spent a lifetime pretending had healed. Even now, at 63, I still catch myself smoothing the tremor in my voice whenever I say my own name aloud. My name is Vivian. I remind myself quietly each morning, as if the syllables alone could anchor me to who I once believed I'd become. But names carry history, and mine carries more shadows than light. I wish I could tell this story like a Professor Clean. Structured, with a beginning that makes sense, and an ending that ties everything together with a bow. But life doesn't behave like a lecture hall. Life is messy, jagged, unpredictable. And the truth has a cruel way of waiting, of circling back when you least expect it, of demanding to be heard long after you've stopped wanting to listen. For me, truth began clawing back into my life on a cold Thursday morning. The kind where the Boston air feels thin enough to break. I was sipping lukewarm tea in my small kitchen, half reading drafts from my students, half convincing myself that retirement might be kinder than another semester of disillusioned undergraduates. When the letter arrived, a plain white envelope slipped under my door. No postage stamp. No handwritten note. Just my name. Vivienlane. Nothing more. It startled me in a way that felt unreasonable. At my age, I should not be jumpy over paper. But something about the handwriting, elegant loops, steady pressure, a style nobody uses anymore, struck a nerve I couldn't place. I stared at it for what felt like hours before tearing it open with fingers that betrayed a quiver I couldn't hide. Inside was a single sentence. Typed. Not written. Your mother left something behind for you. It's time you knew the truth. No signature. Just an address. An abandoned house on the outskirts of Marblehead. My mother had been gone for decades, and yet suddenly she was everywhere in the sunlight slanting across the kitchen table. In the faint scent of roses from the old ceramic dish she once used, in the soft echo of her voice, humming the same lullaby she sang to me when I was too young to understand heartbreak. I sat down, stunned, feeling the old ache swell inside my chest, the ache of a daughter who grew up believing she never deserved her mother's love because her father said so. I folded the letter carefully, as though it might shatter if handled too roughly. Then, without thinking, I reached for my coat. I don't know how long I drove. Marblehead always carried a strange mixture of comfort and dread for me. Comfort because its quiet streets reminded me of my mother's gentleness. Dread, because it also held the ghost of every humiliation my father carved into me. The house at the address was an old colonial tucked behind overgrown hedges, its windows shuttered, its porch sagging slightly from years of abandonment. I would have driven past it if not for the faint imprint of a brass plaque near the door. Half covered in vines. I brushed it clean. Eleanor Lane. My mother's name. A part of me wanted to turn back, to pretend I had never received the letter. But another part, the part that had stayed quiet far too long, compelled me forward. Inside, the air was cold and stale, thick with dust and silence. But nothing was vandalized. Nothing was out of place, as if someone had preserved it the way one preserves a memory untouched. Sacred. Painful. A thin beam of light from a cracked window fell on a desk in the corner. On the desk sat a second envelope, yellowed with age but still intact. My name was written across the front in my mother's handwriting. I felt my lungs tighten. My hands shook as I opened it. My dearest Vivian, if you are reading this, it means the moment I feared has finally come. I stopped breathing. My hands shook as I opened it. I kept something from you, something I never wished you would need. But I know your father, and I know the cruelty that hides behind his charm. One day, he may try to erase you, to make you feel small, to steal from you what was always meant to be yours. My throat tightened until swallowing hurt. This house, and what lies within it, belong to you, not to him, not to your siblings, to you. Hidden in the drawer beneath this letter is the truth he spent his life burying. Forgive me for waiting this long. Forgive me for not being stronger when you needed me most. But know this, Vivian, you were never the mistake he made you believe you were. My vision blurred. The room tilted slightly. Tears I thought I had outgrown streamed down my cheeks. Quiet and uninvited, I reached for the drawer beneath the desk. Inside was a small metal box and a key taped to the lid. With trembling fingers, I unlocked it. Folders, documents, photos, legal certificates, all bearing my mother's signature, all dated the years before her death, and all documenting something I had never imagined. A trust. A property portfolio. Shares in multiple companies. Assets transferred quietly into my name. All hidden from my father. And then one final document signed. Notarized. Sealed. A confession. My mother's confession. I pressed it against my chest, unable to read further. I sat on the dusty wooden floor of that abandoned house, sobbing in a way I had not sobbed since I was a child. Decades of silence, blame, and emotional exile cracked apart inside me. Every word my father had ever thrown at me ungrateful, soft, foolish, useless, echoed in my skull until they lost their power. Because here, in this forgotten place, my mother had left proof that I mattered. Proof that I was not the failure he painted me to be. I stayed in that house until the sun dipped below the horizon, until the shadows grew long and my tears dried into a tightness around my eyes. Only then did I finally unfold the last page in the box, the one that would ignite everything. It was a letter addressed not to me, but to my father. I shouldn't have read it, but something inside me, something tired of being obedient, tired of being careful, made me do it. Richard, if you find this, then you know what I have done. You will call me a traitor, a fool, a woman too sentimental to understand business. But I understand more than you think. I know about the lies. I know about the contracts. I know about the money that should never have existed. And I know what you did to our daughter. If you ever try to hurt her again financially, emotionally, or in reputation, everything you fear will come to light. I have ensured it. Consider this my final act of protection. Eleanor. I folded the letter slowly. My heart was a drum inside my chest. Everything I had believed about my family, every story, every accusation, every justification my father had forced me to swallow began to crumble. And something inside me began to wake. Something sharp. Something determined. And something inside me began to wake. When I stepped out of the house, the night air felt colder, but I felt strangely lighter, firmer, as though a spine I had never known I possessed was beginning to form. My mother had left me more than assets. She had left me ammunition. She had left me truth. And truth, once uncovered, refuses to stay quiet. I locked the door behind me, clutching the box to my chest. As I walked back to my car, I whispered into the darkness. Thank you, Mom. I'm ready now. Ready for what? I didn't know yet. But I sensed something coming. Something big. Something dangerous. Something that would force me to confront the family I had spent my life avoiding. And this time, I would not be the quiet daughter. This time, I would not be the one who walked away. This time, I would be the one who stayed. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake in the dim glow of my bedside lamp, the metal box from the abandoned house resting on the quilt beside me like a living thing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's handwriting, the gentle curves of her letters, the quiet strength in every line she wrote. Her voice, silent for decades, echoed in my mind with a force I wasn't prepared for. You were never the mistake he made you believe you were. I had spent my entire adult life building a world where her absence didn't suffocate me, where I didn't have to remember how she faded piece by piece beneath my father's shadow. But that night, memories flooded back with frightening clarity. I saw myself at 10 years old, clutching a poem I had written, running to show my mother, only for my father to snatch it from my hands, skim it with disdain, and say, "This is sentimental nonsense. Stop filling her head with dreams. Eleanor, you're making her weak." I'd never forget the way my mother flinched, not because of the insult, but because she couldn't protect me. Not then, not later, not until now. 30 years too late. Through documents sealed in a rusted metal box. By dawn, I knew I couldn't avoid what came next. I had to face my family. I showered slowly, letting the hot water burn against my skin as if it could melt away the years of fear I still carried. When I dressed, I chose a simple navy blouse and dark slacks clothes that felt like armor without looking like it. Then, for the first time in years, I slipped on my mother's silver bracelet, the one she wore every day until the very end. I hesitated for a moment, my fingers trembling as I clasped it around my wrist. "Be with me," I whispered into the empty room. When I stepped outside, the morning felt deceptively calm. The sharp scent of autumn leaves, the distant hum of traffic, the way sunlight caught on the edges of rooftops, all of it seemed too peaceful for the storm I knew I was walking into. My father's mansion was only 30 minutes away. But the closer I got, the tighter my chest became. I hated that place. Even driving up the long, manicured driveway felt like stepping back in time. Into a version of myself I no longer wanted to inhabit small. Apologetics. Desperate for approval that never came. The house loomed large and immaculate. Every window polished. Every stone perfectly set. A monument to power. Built exactly the way my father liked everything impressive from the outside. Rotten deeper in. I parked, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. For a moment, I considered turning back, telling myself that I didn't owe him anything, not a confrontation, not a reckoning, not a single shred of the truth my mother had left me. But the thought of retreating made something inside me harden. This wasn't just about inheritance. It was about dignity. It was about reclaiming the years he had stolen from my confidence. My joy. My sense of worth. When I rang the doorbell, it was my brother, Daniel, who opened the door. He blinked at me in surprise. His hair disheveled. His shirt half-tucked as if he hadn't expected company. Vivian, he said. Confusion, twisting his brows. What are you doing here? I need to talk to Dad, I said calmly. Now. Daniel stepped aside reluctantly. He's in his study. But Vivian, he's in a mood this morning. Maybe you should. I'm done avoiding him. Daniel exhaled sharply but said nothing more. As I walked through the familiar hallways, framed portraits and marble floors stretching out before me, old memories clawed at the edges of my mind, tears swallowed in silence, words stifled at the dinner table. The countless times I had been dismissed, belittled, rendered invisible. I reached the study door and knocked once before pushing it open. My father looked up from his desk, irritation flaring across his face. Well, he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. The prodigal daughter returns. What's the occasion? Need money approval? Or are you just here to remind us you still exist? I didn't flinch. Not this time. I found something, I said. Something Mom left for me. His expression faltered just for a second, but long enough for me to see the crack in his composure. What are you talking about? He snapped. I placed the metal box on his desk. His eyes widened. He recognized it. He recognized it instantly. And that recognition was all the confirmation I needed. You knew, I whispered. You knew she left this. You knew she hid things from you. And you let me spend my whole life believing I was worthless. His jaw tightened. Your mother was emotional, unstable at times. You shouldn't put much weight on. A trust in my name, property shares, legal documents, a warning addressed to you. My voice rose. Trembling with rage I had held in far too long. That doesn't sound unstable. Dad, that sounds deliberate. That sounds like protection. His face reddened. You had no right to go through her things. She left them for me. And I told the staff to destroy them, he yelled. The room went silent. My breath caught. He realized what he had admitted too late. My father looked away, jaw clenching and unclenching, his hands curling into fists on the mahogany desk. I stepped closer, my voice low and steady. You tried to erase her. You tried to erase what she left me. Why? He didn't answer. So I said what I had always suspected but never dared to speak. Because you couldn't control her, and you couldn't control me. His eyes snapped back to mine, blazing. You were supposed to be obedient. He hissed. Your mother spoiled you with softness. And look at you now, still fragile. Still clinging to her fantasies. Still unfit to carry the Lane name. I don't want the Lane name, I said. I never did. But Mom did everything she could to make sure you didn't ruin me. You think she was some kind of saint? He said bitterly. That woman knew nothing about the real world. She knew about your lies. I said. She knew about the illegal deals. The stolen money. The people you hurt. She left proof. Dad, proof that could destroy everything you built. He went pale. The silence was suffocating. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in my father's eyes. Real fear. You don't know what you've done, he said quietly. You don't understand how dangerous this is. I understand perfectly, I said. For decades. I stayed silent because you made me believe my voice didn't matter. But Mom believed in me enough to leave this behind, and I won't ignore it. I reached into the box and pulled out the final letter, the one addressed to him. I'm giving you a chance, I said softly. A chance to tell the truth. A chance to stop pretending. A chance to free yourself from the lies you've built your life on. My father shook his head slowly, disbelief and anger warring across his face. You wouldn't, he whispered. I held the letter out toward him. I already did. He didn't take it. So I set it on the desk. And in that moment, I realized something profound. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I wasn't the trembling girl he had sculpted out of fear and silence. I was my mother's daughter. And he knew it. I walked to the door with a steadiness I didn't recognize, but welcomed. Vivian, he called after me, voice cracking in a way I had never heard. I paused. You're making a mistake, he said. No, I replied quietly. I'm finally correcting one. I walked out without looking back. As the door swung shut behind me, the house felt different, not smaller, but somehow hollowed, like his reign over it had ended the moment he realized I held power he couldn't crush. Power my mother had given me. Power I was ready to use. When I stepped outside, the cold air hit my face like a baptism. I had no plan yet, no strategy, no sense of what this truth would unleash. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't running. Driving away from my father's mansion felt like stepping out of a suffocating fog. The air outside was cold, crisp, sharp enough to sting my lungs but clean, honest, real. I gripped the steering wheel and let out a long, shaky breath. I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The sky above was heavy with gray clouds, the kind that promised rain, but hadn't quite decided when to break. I understood the feeling. I felt like that sky full, swollen, moments away from release. I should have gone home. I should have taken a moment to breathe, to let my hands stop trembling, to allow my heart to settle back into my chest. But something inside me, something fierce, something ignited, refused to stop. So I drove. Not aimlessly, instinctively. An instinct led me to the one person who had always stood quietly, consistently on the edges of my life, my daughter, Emily. Her hospital shift wouldn't end for another hour. But I parked outside the employee entrance and waited, watching nurses and doctors stream out of the building in waves. Exhaustion etched into their features. Hospital badges swinging from tired shoulders. Life and death passed through their hands every day. Yet they moved with a steadiness I envied. When Emily finally walked out, her scrubs wrinkled and her hair tied back loosely, she looked exhausted, but her eyes softened the moment she saw me. "Mom," she said. Surprised. "Is everything okay?" I couldn't trust my voice yet. Instead, I held up the metal box. Her expression changed instantly. Concern, then dread, then something like resolve. "Get in the car," she said. Inside, she placed her hand over mine, grounding me in a way no one ever had. "Tell me what happened." So I did. All of it. My father's rage, his confession about trying to destroy the documents, his shock when he realized what Mother had left behind, his fear. Emily listened in silence, jaw tightening with every detail. When I finished, she leaned back, exhaling slowly. "So he knew," she said. "This whole time, he knew Mom protected you." I stared at the dashboard. He wanted to erase her. When I finished, she leaned back, exhaling slowly. The truth of that hit harder than anything else. "He can't touch you now," she continued. "Not with what she left you. Not with what you have in that box." I nodded, though part of me still felt small in that familiar childhood way, trembling under my father's shadow. But Emily, she was nothing like him. Her compassion didn't weaken her, it sharpened her. It made her brave. "Mom," she said, her tone steady. "You need help. Not just emotional support, legal support." "I don't want a VAR," I murmured. "But you're already in one." Her words sat heavy between us. I rubbed my temples. I don't know where to start. She hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. "Then start with him," she said. I took the card. Cole Harrington, attorney at law. The same man who had given me my mother's letter 30 years late. The same man who had stood quietly in the parking lot the night everything changed. "You trust him?" I asked. Emily nodded. "I think Mom did. And right now, that's enough." The next morning, I was at his office before dawn. The building was old but dignified brick exterior. Weathered steps. Frosted glass door with gold lettering. Inside, everything smelled faintly of leather and old books. His receptionist greeted me warmly and led me to a small conference room with sunlight creeping across the polished table. Cole entered moments later, moving slower than I remembered, but with the same calm presence. His hair, once silver, had faded to a softer white, and his eyes carried decades of secrets behind them. "Vivienne," he said gently, "I had a feeling you'd visit sooner rather than later." I placed the metal box between us. "I need to know everything," I said. "Everything you know about my mother. Everything she trusted you with. Everything my father hid." He nodded, lowering himself into the chair across from me. "Your mother was the bravest woman I ever knew," he said, "and the loneliest." My throat tightened. "She came to me during the last years of her life," he continued. "After she discovered things your father never meant for her to see. Illegal dealings. Money moving through offshore accounts. Extortion, masked as business strategy." I swallowed hard. I suspected as much. "She feared for you," he said. "She told me that Richard would destroy you if you ever threatened his empire. So she created a safeguard. A financial refuge. And something more. More." He opened a folder. "She feared for you," he said. "She told me that Richard would destroy you if you ever threatened his empire. So she created a safeguard. A financial refuge. And something more. Not documents. Inside were photos. Photos. With another woman. And a child. A young boy." My heart stuttered. "What is this?" I whispered. "A young boy. Your mother hired a private investigator. She discovered your father had a second family." The room spun. No. That couldn't. But the truth was there on glossy paper. My father, smiling a real smile. A warm smile I had never once seen directed at me, holding a little boy on his shoulders. The woman beside him looked soft. Kind. Nothing like the brittle, exhausted figure my mother had become during those years. The betrayal hit like a blade to the ribs. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. "She never told me." I choked out. "She didn't want you to bear that burden," Cole said. Tears blurred my vision. "And that's not all," he added. He slid another folder toward me. Inside legal drafts. Wills. Inheritance document. All naming the other child as beneficiary. My lungs tightened until breathing felt impossible. He wasn't planning to leave anything to me. I whispered, "Not a cent. Not a kindness. Not even acknowledgement." "No," Cole said quietly, "but your mother made sure you were protected." I pressed a trembling hand to my mouth. Cole continued carefully. "She created a trust that bypassed him entirely. Money from her own side of the family. Properties she kept hidden. Investments she quietly built. Enough for you to live independently should the truth ever come to light." The weight of it crushed me and freed me all at once. "Why now?" I asked him. "Why did you wait 30 years? His eyes softened with sorrow. "Because your mother asked me to give you everything, only if your father ever publicly humiliated you." My breath caught. "And he did," Cole said. "Yes. At his 80th birthday celebration, in front of Boston's elite, he had mocked me, belittled me, reduced me to a punchline, and he had done it without remorse, without hesitation, without a flicker of the love he always claimed to have." Cole placed a gentle hand over the folder. "Yes." I closed my eyes. My mother had spent her final years fighting for me in silence. Now it was my turn. When I opened my eyes, they no longer trembled. "I want justice," I said quietly. "I want closure. But more than anything, I want my life back." Cole nodded once. "Then we start today." As I left his office, the cold morning light felt different, brighter, harsher, but cleansing. The wind tugged at my coat, and the city felt alive around me in a way it hadn't for years. For the first time since childhood, I felt my mother beside me, not as a memory, not as a ghost, but as strength. But I didn't know then what the truth would cost me, or who would try to stop me once they realized what I held. I didn't know that the second family, my father's secret family, was still alive. and that they weren't going to let me expose anything without a fight. I didn't plan on finding the second family. I didn't plan on meeting them, speaking to them, or even learning their names. Honestly, I thought the photos would be enough, the truth I needed. The proof that explained everything broken inside my childhood. But life has a way of unfolding in places you never expect, especially when old secrets begin to claw their way into the present. It happened 3 days after my meeting with Cole. I was on my way home from campus, exhausted from trying to pretend that my world hadn't been thrown violently off its axis, when someone knocked on my front door. It wasn't a timid knock or a polite one. It was a sharp, deliberate strike 3 times like a judge's gavel. When I opened the door, a woman stood there. She was younger than me, mid-40s. Maybe. Her hair was a deep chestnut, her posture stiff, her expression guarded, but not cruel. Behind her stood a young man in his early 20s. Tall, with the same jawline and sharp brown eyes my father had passed down to all his children. Except this one wasn't supposed to exist. "Are you Vivian Lane?" the woman asked. My mouth went dry. "Yes." She nodded, almost to herself, then stepped forward. "My name is Margaret Hale," she said, "and this is my son, Anthony." The name struck me like a blow. Hale. Hale wasn't my father's surname. But the way she held herself, the way her eyes didn't flinch, it was clear she wasn't here by accident. Anthony shifted awkwardly behind her. He looked uncomfortable, uncertain. His eyes flicked around my small porch, then landed reluctantly on my face. "May we come in?" Margaret asked. The name struck me like a blow. Hale. Hale wasn't my father's surname. But the way she held herself, the way her eyes didn't flinch, it was clear she wasn't here by accident. Every instinct screamed to close the door, to protect myself, to protect the fragile scaffolding of stability I had been building since uncovering my mother's truth. But something in her gaze, something tired, something resigned, unraveled my resistance. I stepped aside. Inside, she remained standing, as if taking a seat would imply a familiarity neither of us was ready for. "I imagine you know why we're here," Margaret said. "I know enough," I replied quietly, "but not everything." She exchanged a small, weary glance with her son before returning her gaze to me. "I was with your father for 14 years. Every word was a knife. The photos I saw," I whispered. "The little boy. That was Anthony," she said. "He was 10 then." Anthony lowered his gaze. His hands were clenched so tightly at his sides that his knuckles had gone white. He swallowed hard. "So he knew about us. About my mother. About me." She let out a bitter, breathy laugh. "Vivian, he talked about you more than he talked about anyone." That stunned me. "He said you were ungrateful," she continued. "Too idealistic. Too soft. A disappointment. He said he'd done everything for you, and you gave him nothing in return." My chest tightened painfully. "I always thought his cruelty was reserved for my mother and me," I murmured. "He was a cruel man to everyone," Margaret said, "including me." Her voice cracked then, just slightly. "He told me he could never marry me because he already had the perfect wife." She paused. "Your mother." A deep ache settled in the pit of my stomach. For years I had believed my mother was weak, submissive, broken by my father's authority. But now, hearing this, I saw the truth more clearly than ever before. My mother had been extraordinary. She had been a fortress standing between a tyrant and the children he sought to shape in his image. "Why are you here?" I asked softly. "After so many years, why now?" She took a slow breath. "Because he came to see us last night." My heart lurched. "He told us something was coming," she said. "Something big, something that would destroy him unless we helped him." I felt a cold wave of dread wash over me. Help him how? He asked Anthony to testify on his behalf. She looked at her son, who shifted again. "Uneasy. To claim you and your mother tried to steal from him. To paint you as unstable. To say your mother was mentally unwell." My breath caught in my throat. "He wanted me to lie," Anthony said suddenly, his voice cracking under the weight of the admission. "He said it was the least I could do for him. For the years he supported us." The bitterness in that word "supported" was unmistakable. "He threatened to cut us off if we didn't do it," Margaret added. "But he already cut us off years ago. We haven't seen a cent from him since Anthony turned 18. I stared at her, stunned. I didn't know, I whispered. You weren't supposed to, she said. Your father made sure of it. He kept us separate. Hidden. Convenient. Anthony swallowed. We didn't come to help him. We came to warn you. My throat tightened. To warn me. His disparity. Margaret said. He's cornered. And desperate men do dangerous things. A tremor ran through me. What is he planning? She shook her head. I don't know. But he told us that if we didn't help him, he would handle it himself. He said he would ruin everything your mother left you. A chill raced down my spine. He can't, I whispered. Legally. He can't. Legally, she repeated softly. Vivian. Your father never operated within the lines of what's legal. The silence that followed was suffocating. He's coming for you, she said. I thought you deserved to know. My breath came shallow and uneven. What do you want from me? I asked. Why tell me this? Her answer was immediate. Because you're the only one who ever meant anything to Eleanor Lane, she said. And because he destroyed her. And because I refused to let him destroy you next. Something inside me broke open, then not in pain, but in understanding. Deep, profound understanding. My mother hadn't been weak. She had been fighting alone. Against a man who had manipulated everyone he touched. Including the woman now standing in my living room. Thank you, I whispered. My voice trembling. Margaret nodded once and turned to leave. But Anthony hesitated. His eyes met mine uncertain. Wounded. But sincere. For what it's worth, he said softly. I'm sorry. For everything he did. And for everything he didn't do. I swallowed the lump in my throat. It wasn't your fault. He nodded and followed his mother out. When the door closed behind them, the silence pressed against me like a weight. I sat down at the edge of the sofa. Shaking. Overwhelmed. My father had known his empire was cracking. He had known I held the match that could burn it down. And now he wanted to stop me. Not through truth. Not through apology. But through destruction. I didn't have the luxury of hesitation anymore. I reached for my phone and dialed Cole. When he answered, I didn't bother with polite greetings. He's coming after me, I said. I know. Cole replied calmly. He called me this morning. He's filing a petition to challenge your mother's trust. My chest tightened. Can he do that? No, Cole said, but he's trying anyway. Which means it's time. Vivian. Time for what? For you to decide how far you're willing to go. I closed my eyes. Time for what? My mother had fought in silence. I would not. I'm willing to go all the way, I said. Cole exhaled slowly, almost like a prayer. Then prepare yourself, he said, because the truth you hold, it doesn't just expose him. I frowned. What do you mean? It exposes everything. And when the truth comes out, your family, the public, the second household, none of them will be the same. The room felt unbearably still. Are you ready for that? Vivian. I looked at the metal box on my table. My mother's handwriting. My father's betrayal. The second family's warning. Decades of lies stitched together with money and cruelty. And for the first time in my life, I felt steady. I said. I'm ready. But I didn't yet understand that being ready didn't protect you. And the next event only days away would prove that some wars don't end with truth. Some wars end with casualties. The storm arrived 3 days later. Not a real one. Not wind. Not rain. Not thunder, but the kind of human storm that rips through a life and leaves everything unrecognizable in its wake. I woke that morning to a silence so heavy it felt like the house itself was holding its breath. A strange unease lingered in the air, something subtle. Something wrong, like the tension in a room seconds before water boils. I had just poured myself a cup of tea when someone pounded hard on my front door. Not knocking. Pounding. 3 times. My heart lurched. For a moment, I froze, gripping the mug so tightly it almost cracked. I wasn't expecting anyone. Cole wasn't due to meet me until the afternoon. Emily was on a 12-hour shift. I wasn't in the mood for neighbors or strangers or anyone else. When the pounding came again, louder, more aggressive, I forced myself to stand. The moment I opened the door, the world tilted slightly. My father stood on the porch, He was alone. No driver. No assistant. No shield of wealth or power. Just him older than I remembered. Unshaven. His posture slightly hunched. His eyes rimmed with exhaustion and something I couldn't name. Rage. Desperation. Fear. All three lived inside him like wild things. "Vivian," he said, his voice gravelly. "We need to talk." Every bruise he'd ever left on my life throbbed at once. 1,000 childhood memories flashed like lightning. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me, blocking him from entering the sanctuary I had built my home. My peace. My shelter from him. "What do you want?" I asked quietly. He exhaled sharply, as if offended by the question. "You've made a mess." I uncovered the truth. I corrected. "There's a difference. You don't know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing." His face twisted. "You're destroying our family." I laughed once softly. Bitterly. "You destroyed our family the day you chose secrets over honesty." He stepped closer. "Listen to me." "No," I said. Surprising, even myself, with the strength in my voice. "For once in your life, you listen." His nostrils flared. He wasn't used to being challenged. "You lied to us. You humiliated Mom. You had a second family. You hid money. You tried to erase everything she left me." His jaw clenched. "I built everything," he snapped. "You think your mother gave you protection. She was naive. You don't understand how the world works. I understand that the world you built was rotten." The words came out steady, controlled, ice wrapped in fire. My father's face reddened. "You're going to walk away from this," he said lowly. "You're going to keep your mouth shut and hand over everything your mother left you." "And if I don't?" His eyes hardened into something sharp, something cruel, something I had grown up fearing but now recognized as nothing more than cowardice adorned in power. "You'll regret it," he said. I felt the threat in my bones. But I didn't flinch. "Do you think I'm still the child you frightened into silence?" I whispered. He stepped closer, too close, but before he could speak, a voice called from behind me. "Step away from her." I turned. Anthony and Margaret stood at the edge of the walkway. My father stiffened, shock flashing through his expression before it hardened into something darker. "You came here," he growled at them. "You dairy. We're not protecting you anymore," Margaret said. "Not after everything." Anthony stepped forward, shoulders square, eyes locked on my father. "She deserves the truth." The moment shattered something inside my father. His face contorted rage, denial, disbelief, humiliation, and then he lunged. But not at me. At Anthony. It happened fast, too fast. My father grabbed him by the collar, shoving him back toward the steps. Margaret screamed. I rushed forward, hands trembling. My father's rage exploded, like a man losing control of everything he had ever owned. "You ungrateful little." "Stop." My voice tore through the morning like thunder. My father froze. Slowly, so slowly, he turned toward me, chest heaving. "This is your doing," he snarled. "You turned my family against me." "I didn't turn anyone," I said. "You did that yourself." Something broke in his eyes, then something fragile. Something dangerous. He stumbled back, clutching his chest for a moment, his breath hitching. "You're killing me," he whispered. "No," I said softly. "You're finally seeing the truth." He staggered once more. And then, his knees buckled. He collapsed onto the cold concrete. Margaret gasped. Anthony moved instantly. Kneeling beside him, my heart hammered so hard it felt like agony, but even then, even in his collapse, I felt no triumph. Only the terrible, familiar ache of a daughter who had never been loved the right way. "Call an ambulance," I shouted. Anthony was already dialing. I knelt beside my father. His breathing was shallow, his eyes cloudy with fear he could no longer disguise. "Vivian," he rasped. I leaned in. For a moment, he looked like a man stripped of every lie, every illusion of power. "I didn't want," he whispered. He never finished the sentence. The ambulance arrived quickly. They stabilized him, loaded him onto a stretcher, and drove away with lights flashing but sirens silent. Silent. I watched until the vehicle disappeared. Margaret touched my arm gently. I'm sorry. Vivian. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. Will you go with them? She asked. I shook my head. No. I whispered. He made his choices. And for the first time, I meant it. Later that afternoon, Cole called. He's stable, he said. He'll recover. I said nothing. You don't sound surprised. I'm not. A long pause. Vivian, he said gently. This changes nothing legally. Your mother's trust is safe. The documents are real. His threats won't stand. I'm not. But it changes everything emotionally, he added softly. Yes. It did. That night, I drove to the ocean, the place I always went when my mind felt too heavy to carry alone. The wind was cold, stinging my cheeks, tugging strands of hair free. Waves crashed against the rocks like they were trying to break open the earth itself. I stood there for a long time, thinking of my mother, of my father's collapse, of the second family, of the truth I now carried like a burning coal in my chest. Vengeance had never been what I wanted. What I wanted was acknowledgement, closure. A voice inside me keyed. Steady, familiar, rose up like a tide. He cannot take your peace unless you give it to him. My mother's voice. I closed my eyes as wind pushed against my body like a protective hand. I'm done. Mom, I whispered. I'm done fighting ghosts. When I opened my eyes again, the horizon glowed faintly with the last light of the fading sun. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. Not because my father fell. Not because secrets surfaced. Not because revenge tasted sweet. But because truth raw, painful, honest had finally been spoken. And truth is the one inheritance no one can steal. Before I end this story, I just want to say, if this journey meant something to you, if it reminded you of your own strength, or your own scars, or the quiet courage you carry, even when the world tries to silence you, then please, like, share, and subscribe. Your voice, your presence, and your story matter more than you think. And if you have something on your heart, leave a comment. I read them. And you're not alone.